That's what you do.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Writers Roundtable. Tonight, we are going to have McClure from the York History Center talk to us for a few minutes, and then we are going to have Jamie, Jim, and Scott Mingus talk to you about all things editing and publishing. I'm really happy to see so many people here in person tonight. I hope we get a lot of viewers online as well. But before we start, I want to take a moment to recognize that this is probably the last time we are going to be in this library. The York History Center is moving soon, so you can tell that there's no books here for you to look at, nothing to pull down from the shelves. So it's kind of sad, but it's exciting that we're going to be moving from the old to the new. But while you're here tonight, just take a moment to look around and say goodbye to our pretty much famous York County History Library. But now I'm going to have Nicole Smith come up, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what's coming up at the York History Center in the new space, and then we will get into the presentation with Scott, Jim, and Jamie. So,
hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out this evening. It's great to see so many folks. We have been closed technically for a while now, so it's nice to see people. My name is Nicole Smith. Just a little bit about the new History Center. It's almost ready to open. We actually have open houses for our members. If you're a member of the History Center or would like to be, our open houses are in June 26th, 27th, and 28th. We're planning to open the new library on July 9th. And so stay tuned for that, as well as the exhibits. And then we have a grand opening celebration the first weekend in August. So please come and see our new place. As far as programming, tonight's program is being recorded and streamed. You can find it on the York County History Center YouTube channel. A couple upcoming programs. We do have a South Central Pennsylvania Genealogy Society program this coming Sunday. It's the Henry James Young Awards, and it will be in this building here as well. On June 19th, we'll also have a Civil War Roundtable program, which is Daniel Nye speaking on the Huntley Watch. And sure, for any more information about our programs, our openings at our new building, please visit yorkhistorycenter.org. Thank you.
Okay, so tonight for our main presentation, we have Scott Mingus, Jamie Noerpel, and Jim McClure, and they are authors of many publications about York County history topics, and they're going to walk you through all the steps and processes from the idea to the publication. And they're going to also cover two important and overlooked parts of the process of editing and marketing. So their presentation is going to be about 45 minutes, and then we are going to have a question and answer period. So if you can please hold your questions until the end, we will cover them. But until then, please enjoy our presentation.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
and then also we're hoping that at the end, after we go through this and share, that we can also go around the room and you can share some of the things that you're working on. So tonight we are going to go through, start with Scott and the idea, how you create a title. Then Jim will get into coaching. I'll explain more of what it's like to be coached from that end. Scott will get back into the researching. Jim will jump in with the writing and editing. I'll finish up with the being edited, and finally Scott with the marketing plan and the publication.
Thanks. So one of the things that's important, I've written 36 books and I've got at least 15 more in my mind that I think already. Maybe not. But one of the things I think is really important, if you look schematically, is once you decide on what you think you want to talk, what you want to write about, single most important thing to get started is find out who's already been in your space, what's already been written, what's out there, what gaps exist in the existing literature, what can you do better or differently that's been done before, you know, what are the criticisms of the previous works that are in the field? Read the reviews, read, you know, on Amazon, etc., different places to try to understand, you know, did they succeed in their mission with this book that's at least similar, or at least in the same field that you're trying to get in? You know, what gaps are out there? What didn't they cover that perhaps you should have covered? Or is there new information that's now available? Are there new sources that you've uncovered? Are there new interpretations of what the data has already said for years that people may have misinterpreted from that standpoint? You know, what are the gaps? You know, and sometimes it's helpful for me to actually sit down and write them out. You know, I do in the business world what's called a gap analysis. When we look for new products that we're trying to create for our customers, marketplaces will sit down and will actually write down, you know, this is what is missing. You know, these are the types of information that nobody's covered before, or perhaps is inadequately covered to begin with. Step number 3 is to start looking at sources. You know, what's new? What's different? I mean, if you're lucky enough that you have a topic that nobody's ever did before, great, God bless you. But generally, you'll find that most topics, particularly in the history and nonfiction world, somebody's did it. It's a little different in the novel world where you can just brainpower something brand new and different and try to come up with novel ideas. It's a little different history. Somebody's probably been there before, or has at least written about it, whether it's newspaper accounts, diaries, letters, journals. Somebody's written something about what's out there. So, you know, what have you found that nobody else has covered before? You know, what kinds of new insight do you have? What's the data telling you, you know, that, you know, is missing from any previous presentation? Number 4, and this is the number 1 problem that I wrestle with all the time, and I'm sure many history writers do, is how do you make this relevant? I write Civil War books that are 160 some years ago, or Underground Railroad books that are, you know, in some cases almost 200 years ago. The information you're trying to understand. It's one thing to regurgitate a bunch of facts, and that's what so many books tend to end up being. It's a whole other ballgame to find something that people today will like to read. Recognize one key point. Most of us are not writing to record history for the masses. We're writing because we want to make money, or we want to tell a story, or we want to get information, transposed to someone else, to convince somebody of your argument, etc. You're not trying to just put down long sheets of facts that somebody out there may never read. You want to try to make what you're writing relevant to the people that are going to be reading today. Especially if you want to do a commercial. What are they willing to pay money to read? From that standpoint. So you got to make sure there's stories, there's all kinds of content. We'll talk more about this as they go back on. And number 5 is where most people miss the boat. I counsel a lot of young writers in the Civil War field. I've got dozens of people that I've worked with over the last 10 years. Number 1, who's the market? Who are you trying to write the book for? You know, is it 5 people that are interested in your very narrow gap? Or are there thousands or 10,000 people out there who might be interested in your subject? Who is the audience? Always remember, who are you writing for? How do you reach that audience? You know, what kinds of language are they looking for? How are they going to want to continue to push forward from there?
Scott, can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah, sure.
So like, can you give us an example of how you changed, like, can you, one of your books that you've written? And
Yeah, that's a great example. It's actually going to lead into the other topic, but I had a long disagreement with an editor of one of my early books, who was from the University Press, so it should remain nameless, who wanted my book to be far more data-based and far less story-based. And I'm like, no. I said, I know you're an academic press, but you know, I've written 2 books previously, and my customers expect stories. That's my brand. My brand is storytelling. And so I had a long disagreement with them, pushed back a lot, and finally we compromised, and I put in 40 stories that weren't in the book originally, and took out a bunch of technical jargon. that maybe only a lieutenant colonel in the army would understand. And, ended up with a book that is still in print 15 years later on Louisiana Tigers. So, that's one example. It's just be prepared to understand and be prepared, know your audience. In case my audience didn't want what they ever thought they might want. That I will. Oops, wrong way. Let's go this one. Oh, last thing. And as a lifetime scientist, this first day at Miami University in engineering class, very first thing. Professor put this up on there and said, you're going to be executives in the product development industry for the rest of your lives. Memorize this, put it on your desk, and never ever forget it. Find a need, fill it. Whether you're a scientist, whether you're a writer, find the need. That's where those first 5 steps we talked about become so very important. Identify the need, find it, figure out what you can do to fill it. Okay. Oh, one last thing. One thing you also keep in mind as well is the power of today's search engines. Your title should be reflective of 2 things. What's the book about? And 2, what are the most popular catchphrases that people are going to search for in your world? For example, Flames Beyond Gettysburg. Catchy title. Flames. Okay, Gettysburg is a catchword. More people will search Civil War books for the word Gettysburg than any other word except for one other word. Anybody know what that other word is that people search on? Confederate. It's the #1 search term in the Civil War world. So, Flames Beyond Gettysburg, catchphrase, popular term, flames descriptive, and my subtitle, the Confederate expedition to the Susquehanna River. So you throw in Gettysburg, you throw in Confederate, and you get on the 2 most popular search terms. So again, whatever book you're going to write on, understand who's your audience, what are they going to be searching for, how are they going to find your book among the millions of other books that are out there. I mean, Amazon's got, by their estimation, 40 million books in print. You need to figure out how do people find yours. Okay. Now we're going
Okay, ooh, you already saw that. Oh, okay. So we're talking about coaching. Really, coaching and editing is the same, kind of the same thing. Coaching, you might think about that as working more with the writer. Editing might be working with the words, but really they're interchangeable. So the idea would be when you're going into a work, who do you surround yourself with? It could be 1 coach, 2 coaches, 3 coaches edit. However many you feel you can do. Probably the more the better, but it's like this idea that that writing is something you do when you're all alone in a tower somewhere, and like Martin Luther did that. He wrote the German translation of the Bible, but I think he was sought after by authority, so he did that. Most of us aren't sought after by authority, so we ought to surround ourselves with. One way to do that is say, well, I can't afford editors, I can't really do that. What about setting a bargaining agreement? You read someone else's, you coach someone else's, have them coach yours. Develop those relationships. Do that over the course of time, and it's the best way to do it. I know that I'm blessed with bartering with several people even in this room, and it's you can't do it alone. This is from a writer's point of view, you really need to get honest feedback from them. And it's more than just catching typos. You want them to go more than just catching typographic errors. You want them to really look at your stuff and make really good suggestions. Now, from the point of view of the coach, whenever I'm coaching someone or talking to someone, I always will tell them, start learning now about your topic. Start reading Facebook, history sites on Facebook, for example. Really become involved in your subject matter, because that ties a lot into what Scott was saying about historiography, which I can't say, historiography, in the sense that when I started doing history in York County in the 1990s, there was about a handful of people that really were kind of a filter of, you know, of before you get into that filter, before you're stuck with the elevated with the public. And nowadays, we have what I call an open source relationship. I mean, we have Facebook, so anybody can be a publisher. I think that's a good thing. I think we're better off now than we were then. But at the same time, we have, and that's why we're having this workshop here tonight. At the same time, there are ladies going in working that don't have that deep knowledge that maybe the people in the 1990s had. They were relatively few, really deep. We have a lot of history people, which is great in York County, but we don't do our homework as it wasn't published before as much as maybe we should. And another thing, I just threw this in, it doesn't really fit anywhere, but when you're working with someone as a coach or as a writer, try to create an email chain or a chain or a text chain. I don't know how many times I go to a meeting, like even a meeting of an anniversary committee meeting. And so you have that meeting, and then I almost always try to talk the meeting with links and reference points, and things like that, because I've been sat through an hour meeting, and so how can I optimize that hour that I've given up? Well, I want them to see some of the stuff that's out there. That ties all the way back to historiography. Most people don't have a sense of what's been written before. So when you're working for Coach as a writer, as Coach working with a writer, you know, make sure that you create that communications device. Now, some of the topics that's in this builds again on what Scott was talking about. I think two areas that you have to really understand if you're doing history in a deep way in your county. One is religion in your county, all the different Protestant groups. You'll just run across those again and again. In fact, this ties to the last point, Latino history. We might think Latinos, for example, were all Catholics, but there's Pentecostal Latinos, there's mainline, there's Latinos in mainline congregations. There are Latino Protestants that aren't Pentecostal. There's Catholic Pentecostal or charismatic Latinos. So you have to, I think if we're doing work in this area, we have to understand that the American Revolution is an area that I think we're losing. That's not an area of great study nowadays. That's a wide open area for someone that's interested in that, especially with these big anniversaries coming out. And I throw Jean's book out there. She and I had this conversation, so I reviewed or edited or some form was part of Jean's project on Top Shine, our book Faith and Family. She and I went back and forth because the June, like Henry Young and like Charles Gladwell, like John Stair, these top-notch historians throughout our history have a great grasp on the religion, situation in your county over the course of time. So June had that, but yet I tried to nose in and say, are we really understanding the German Reformed view of baptism, the German view form of communion? Because that had importance when you're doing baptismal certificates. Of course, June was right. She said, I'm going to go to the confession. The German Reformed are confessional churches. She said, I'm going to go to the confession and I'll see who's right here. And she, of course, was right. So another thing that really to work on in any piece you do is make sure that you're at least considering your work from a race, class, gender point of view. There's other factors you can bring in. And I'll give you a couple examples of that. Examples might help more than anything. I had to give I gave a presentation in Spring Grove about the fascinating things about Spring Grove. And I knew I wanted to work in there about women who have historically not been covered in presentations or in writing as well as guys, but also people of color. So I was thinking, how would I do that in Spring Grove? I thought, well, I could do Eli Brooks, who's one of the best basketball players ever to come out of your county. Well, am I stereotyping that by using an athlete as part of my presentation, black athlete? Is that stereotyping? And of course, I was overthinking it because I went and gave the presentation and included a slide on Eli in there. And I tell you, it kind of brought down the house. Everybody, they kind of stopped. Everybody's talking about it and said, yeah, we're proud of him and so on, and so, never overthink it, try to work in. Now, you don't want to force something like that, if there isn't anything, just don't, it'll seem forced. But that night it didn't seem forced, by the crowd's reaction. Another one was, I was doing a similar program in Manchester Township. How can I work race into Manchester Township? I mean, because that's a largely white, historically white township. And then I started looking through the YDR's archives, and I saw a picture of a village chambliss, and she's sitting on the buddy bench with Christian Bucks. Christian Bucks was a 7-year-old that kind of invented the buddy bench. So there in that one photo, I had Ophelia Chambliss, who lives in Manchester Township, and she has a studio, I had a studio in Manchester Township. Then we had Christian Bucks, so I was able to get a young person in that presentation and get Ophelia a big member of Manchester Township. So if you're always looking for that, you'll find, or you're more likely to find it than if you don't look at that. And nowadays, the history enterprise really demands us to do that. Latino history, I think Latino history today is where our Black history was 25 years ago. We're doing some great work. See Nisi back there, and others are doing really great work on on Black history, and so that's really that enterprise is doing well. But Latino history, the largest minority group in York County, I think it's 1 out of 11 York counties. It's been almost very little written. And I'll just tell you, I put together, Jamie and I operate with senior.com, which is a digital site. I put a long timeline of Latino history on there, and Jamie edited it. We put pictures in and so on. So there's a start for someone if you want to get into that new frontier. So Jamie.
Thanks, Jim. So now the question is, how do you get a coach? Like, where do you even start? Where for me, so how I met Jim is on my own personal board of directors, if you will, so people I go to for help. And the reason why that happened was because it was a number of years ago, I want to say around 2018, I was interning here at the History Center, and I had just written a paper on farm to table that's across the street. I'd written an article for one of my grad classes, and I submitted it to be published here because the History Center has their own journal. And so I sent it to Jim, and I said, hey, he's of course leading that. And I said, do you think this could be published? And he got back to me and said, no. He turned me down and said, it's not what we're looking for. It's not quite history centered, but are you interested in potentially blogging? So YDR has a few local history blogs. And so he challenged me with, you have to write 4 stories in the next month. So that's 1 story a week. He said, if you can do that, then maybe we'll talk about next steps. So he wanted to see if I was actually going to follow through and be able to do it, right? So after I had done that and I showed up to YDR and I'm like, yeah, I'm really interested. He took me seriously, and then we actually looked at names and starting the blog and then moving forward. But Jim had these three things that make our relationship really productive. One is that I respect his opinion. Back when I was in grad school, I worked with a group of folks. We had a group of 5 writers, and we all shared each other's writing once a week, whether it was a presentation or someone's even resume, and we just helped one another. There was one guy on the committee that I'll call Stan, and Stan got to the point where the feedback that he was giving me, I just fundamentally disagreed with. And it's not that I disrespected him as a person, I just found that his comments weren't really in line with what I was trying to achieve. And so after about another month of that, I thought, this relationship is fizzling out, and that's okay. Like, sometimes not every coach that you're going to work with is exactly what you're looking for. But Jim and I, our styles complement one another. You can tell though, if you go through witnessing New York, if you get to know us well enough, you can tell who wrote which articles. We do have different styles. But when we're going through and helping each other, it's not like he's coming through and slashing everything because our writing is different. So for example, if I were to write a sentence, even though it's not exactly how Jim would have written that sentence, he's not going to go through and restructure the whole thing because that's a set style thing, right? He's instead going to go through and just give me some direction of what I should include. So if you find someone that you're like, I like this person's writing, I can vibe with it, then that might be a good coach for you. But if you're reading it and it's just not something that aligns with how you would write, pass. And then finally, there was another person in our 5-person committee who never got back to us, or it would be like 2 days too late. And if you're gonna have an editor, they need to check their email or at least be available. I'm sure you work with people who just frankly don't take the time. It's just take time to edit. And a lot of these things are, there's time crunches and there's deadlines. And that also means that you have to keep deadlines too. That if you say you're gonna have it done by June 11th, you gotta have it done by June 11th or have no excuse. So when you go into these coaching meetings, a lot of listening. So when I first started out with Jim, I would feel the need to defend myself. Like he would say, Jamie, this doesn't work. I'm like, yeah, but here's what I was thinking. And it's like, no, it doesn't matter what I was thinking. He's coming at it from a reader's perspective. And so I just had to shut up and listen. So I put up there, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So when you're getting feedback, sometimes you just have to sit and take it all in. And with that also comes a lot of trust. There were times where I didn't quite understand the guidance of my omniscience editor. And I thought, I'm not sure if I'm going to include that. But that trust building takes years and years and years. It takes consistency. You can't just immediately, like after today's presentation, if one of your takeaways is I need to find somebody that I can work with to be my coach, then it's not like all of a sudden the next month you guys are going to be vibing at a coffee shop and sharing together all these ideas. It takes a lot of time and back and forth. So I would recommend starting out small, like maybe small articles or even paragraphs. Test a paragraph and see how they edit it, if they're actually helpful or if they give you good feedback instead of just jumping, full into a manuscript. And then finally, if you're going to go through this process of getting a coach, I highly recommend that you want to grow and stretch yourself. Like Jim said, you have to find someone who's going to challenge you and isn't just going to say, I'm sure you've all had friends. They're like, oh, this is great. This is wonderful. Wait, but tell me actually how I can improve. Like what is actually going to look like. Every time we do a hometown history podcast, on the way home with my husband, I'm like, all right, give me the Oreo sandwich. Tell me what we did well. Tell me what we need to fix. And then maybe finish with another compliment. It's always good to end with a compliment. But I need that honest feedback if you're going to improve. So it requires you to have a little bit of, I'm here to learn, and actually take what you say into account. So here's an example. So there's a lot of text on the screen, but the example is, so when Dami, Jim, and I do our hometown history podcasts, we come up with takeaways. And so this most recent podcast we did was last weekend. It was on Moran Jacob and the monuments that are around, like the Tinker, the World War II Memorial. We were thinking about what are our big takeaways. So I came up with this first 2, and the first one was just how there's a lot with memorials about what they say about us. If an outsider were to come to York and walk through York and see a picture of a tinker, right? You're talking about the Tin Man, right? That's outside of Iron Gift Horse. Then they were to see Lafayette putting up his cup, and then they were to see the Korean monument that's down by the rail trail, and they were off to Prince Street, and they would see the World War II Memorial. How does that reflect York? Like, how does that reflect in the society? So that was my first one. The second one was that we really take monuments for granted, especially me being, can I still call myself a young person? I'm in my 30s now, so I'm in this weird, like, am I still young? I don't know, younger person. Like, it just seems like you're static and you're stable, and then you really forget all the work and history that goes into putting these monuments in place. And so the whole point of our presentation last weekend was talking about Moran Jacobs behind the scenes stories of how they came about. So those were my first 2 takeaways. Jim added though these 2. So Jim, I always go back and I'm like, so what else am I missing? What else is part of the story?
Jamie asked me what to add to the takeaways. So I looked at what was there and thought, well, this is about Lorraine, who was Jamie's grandmother, by the way. This is about Lorraine. We have to talk about her. And so I had, this is a story about sculptor to be sure, but also a sculptor, a rare woman sculptor. There's the race class gender coming in the region who pioneered her craft against immense headwinds to mark to make a mark on York County's history. And then I added another one, which really Lorraine's place in history. And I tried to, have some wording in that respect. And really, for the murals in York that went in, and Grant's Park went in about the same time. So the real pioneers in terms of material culture in York County. So that's what I added.
So then I had a decision to make, because this is too much. Like, you cannot have all of this as a takeaway. I want you to memorize this entire paragraph, it can't happen. So what we did was I cut one completely. I cut it out, which sometimes is very painful as a writer. You take time to craft these arguments, and then your editor says slash and burn. You're like, what? Ah. So what I decided to do was I kept Jim's first two. You notice you'll see the first one is still there about this story about sculptures, to be sure, but also about a sculptor. Then also she'll go down in history as, the catalyst for the arts movement. But then I chose to just keep the first one about what does memorial say about us. I chose to trim it down. So in this case, I listened to my editor, and then we decided to just kind of pare it down. Now in this case, I didn't do as good of a job listening. So when we do our scripts, so when we create these podcasts, there's a lot of work behind the scenes. So we spend a number of hours creating a script. Dami and I do not follow it to a T word for word, but generally it's our guideline. So I've got right here what Dami was gonna say, and then I have right here what I was gonna say, and then this is in Google Docs. Google Docs is free. It's live editing. You can edit right away, and it syncs up immediately. It's very easy to use. Jim went and added that he would like us to add Don Lineball's story about Pan-Indian movement. And he had brought it up, as he reminded me today, about three different times in our production meetings. And when I went through and read the article on Don Lineball, I thought, oh yeah, I have what he's saying in there, right? Well, what I should have done is gone to Jim and say, what do you exactly want in there? By the third time, he was being polite, right? I didn't even realize he was saying, maybe this needs to be in here, right? But instead, I just kind of glossed over it, and I pointed it got too late. So I should have listened, and if I was confused, I should have just said, what exactly do you want to go in here? Be specific. And then Scott, you had something that you wanted to add too about this. Okay, I'm here. About cutting and, okay, I'm sure it'll come to you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I guess the one point is, yeah. One point on that is to always remember as well that it's a two-way street. Your editor makes suggestions, but sometimes editors are wrong in some cases, and sometimes you need to appropriately push back. There are other cases where it's like 3 times, yeah, you might want to listen. But there's certainly also cases, so, and again, it goes back to the scientific world. If somebody is challenging your theory, use data. So just like when you're writing here and your editor pushes back and says, I don't like that. If you really want to stand your ground with what you want to say, use data. Find a reason, rational reason why you want to keep those edits in place.
Another example is for my job. I worked for a nonprofit called the York County Safety Flag, but we support law enforcement. And so here is a video podcast that I put on with Warden out of Ogle of York County Prison, and then Louis Barrios, who is considered a credible messenger. That means he is someone who serves time that then changed his life, and now he goes out and talks to people in the community. So people carries more weight if you want to listen to him. So after I created this, I sent it to Jim. Poor Jim. How many hours do you think he spent a week editing my stuff? Don't say, I shouldn't be paying him.
It's always.
And I asked him to read over it, watch it, and then tell me how it looks. And so he got back with this. And then you want me to just go over it quick, or you want? So we watched it, and so from my perspective, the first line immediately disarms me, right? He says, like the others, very good. And it could have been crap, but he still was nice to begin with. And that's just, if you're going to coach others, then it's nice to start with something positive. He said that the two had, anyway, he just goes through it and says it's pretty good, but here are some things that you should add. Like, I didn't explain credible messenger. I didn't say that in the actual video what it was. And so right now I made sure that's another thing, be coachable, right? If someone takes the time to give you advice, you should implement it. Because if Jim took time to edit my stuff and I didn't actually do it, I said that would be the last time that he would actually take the time to read my stuff. And then he gave me then specific bullet points of things I needed to change. And I don't need to go through each one of these, But you can see that the way that he bulleted things was very helpful for me to go through that and implement it. He also sprinkled in something right here about a discussion how at the prison, they're actually not allowed to use names because it can show favoritism. And so instead they just call them by number. And it kind of seems a little harsh, but you can imagine if you're supposed to be an unbiased police guard and you don't want to start becoming buddy with some people than other people, you have to watch it. So you have to have this barrier. So Jim just pointed out that that was interesting. And so that helps me, gives me feedback, because then I know what my audience is also finding interesting.
Yeah. So, I am a research scientist by training, and so for me, the single most fun part of any book is the research. I love diving into sources, finding that. I know other people find research to be maybe the most boring part of writing something, because people want to jump in. Right, the first rule of product development is spend 10% of your project time planning before you ever start working in the lab, for example. 10% planning up front. It's the same as true with writing a book. I mean, I spend an inordinate amount of time planning before I ever put one word down on print. And some of that is, where do I want to go? Where's the information? Where can I find stuff? Because that's often where a young writer, sometimes in the Civil War world, for example, would come to me. And I'm like, well, have you thought about using newspapers.com or newspaperarchive.com or the Library of Congress, Chronically America site, or the microfilms at the History Center, July 9th, when you come back and can look at that. But there's a lot of stuff in newspapers you want to be able to read. The other thing that's important is to find out what the people say were there. Now, newspaper articles are kind of nice, but often they are somebody else reporting what they saw or heard. Perhaps a reporter or a correspondent. What do the actual participants say? What happened? Did they leave diaries? Did they leave journals? How about letters? And those kinds of things could be interesting. Yeah, whatever stuff you may be doing, take the time to try to find out, are there descendants of people that are key characters in your book? Where do they live? What do they have? Sometimes you gotta be bold. I mean, I've knocked on doors on a few occasions and told people, hey, your house is pretty interesting because the Confederates stole stuff from your house. Let me tell you what I know. Do you know anything about what happened here yourself? And every now and then they're like, come on in and look at my parlor. I've got, great-great-grandpa's letter. So there's things out there that you may not be aware of. Never assume, by the way, that you found the story. Always keep looking. I'm sure Jim from the correspondence world, the newspaper world is, keep looking, see what else is out there. Manuscripts is another interesting thing. There are a lot, believe it or not, at least in the Civil War world, a lot of history world, there are a lot of things people have already written that never got published. Your County History Center, Nicole, you've got unpublished manuscripts in your collection. Some of which I found over the years to be incredibly interesting and incredibly useful. Things that you can find out. Also find out, why didn't they publish this? Sometimes you realize that there's reasons, but often these are really good sources. There are also official records in the case of the Civil War, obviously, but in the case of other topics, the government often had reports. There were other reports from individuals that were involved. They may have written out minutes of meetings, for example, or other documents that are, again, testimony as to what might have actually occurred during this. And the final thing is a phrase that I've never forgotten. Years ago, when I was a student at Miami University, I had a close friend of mine who was an old-time circuit riding preacher from North Carolina. And he always told me a story, and it stuck with me as product development engineer. It sticks with me all the time as a writer. And he talks about the grub worm, that the only way a grub worm can eat is to live in the dirt, dig in the dirt, go as deep as it can go. If a bird wants to eat the grub worm, what's it got to do? Dig deep. Go find the grub worm that's deep. And so their central message was never scratch the surface. Never be satisfied with just telling the shallow story of what you think might have happened. Dig. Go as deep as you can find. You'll find that it's actually a good thing to have way too much information, to be able to pare back to the story you want to create, than to get 2/3 of the way into your book and realize, I don't have any depth. I mean, there's just nothing to support these conclusions, no other information out there. So you want to, dig deep, get grub, understand, what's out there that you can actually find.
Scott, how do you know when you've found enough?
I didn't know you've done enough. You never do, because invariably the one fallacy that always happens is 2 weeks after your book's published, somebody will hit you with the golden manuscript or the golden letter that you wish you would have had a month ago. You never know. At some point, Jamie, it's almost intuition. In the first few books I wrote tended to be over information. And I learned over the years, maybe I went too far the other direction, sometimes with not enough information. So you learn what the balance is, through experience or so. But it goes back again to one of my simple points. What does the reader expect? Just, and where are you going? If you're going with the university press, they're gonna want you to go really deep into this stuff. They may not want nearly as, you may have 20 sources, they may want 50. Just go find more and more stuff. So some of that goes back, in the short answer to your question is, work with your editor. Because your editor typically will be somebody more experienced or connected to your publisher, who's going to give you advice on when are you there? Yeah, we think you're there. The other thing is, that'll comment, it's not on the slides, it's pretty bonus. You live in a digital world. I created, in many cases, Facebook pages for each of my books, at least my major books. So I think one there, but additional photographs, additional letters, additional documents, new information that comes all the time can be just, acting as long as you have your customer base that knows where to find this stuff. Your book becomes an ever living entity rather than just, on a shelf in the library now and nobody remembers it. You can engage with your audience through the Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, anything else where you can keep your book alive, updated. Here's the new sources, here's a new interpretation, and keep that going. The other thing that's important, and this is the number one criticism I have of a lot of young authors or inexperienced authors who come to me with a book. I don't care that you're rehashing what someone else wrote. It's not going to be saleable. It's not going to work. Frankly, it's one step below plagiarism. Find your own stuff, make your own conclusions based on your data. Don't just simply regurgitate the same kind of book that someone else has already done. I mean, so often I'll get manuscripts, and I probably get 15 manuscripts a year to look through that my publisher or people who want to get published will send to me, and you realize that, no, this is ground that's been trod by 5 other people. So find something original, find a get back to the mantra, find a need, fill it. Don't just simply regurgitate. And finally, the last thing is, if you're going to write a book on history, live the history. My number 2 criticism is I gave manuscripts in the door and I realized the person's never set foot in Gettysburg in their life. It's very clear. They got no idea the terrain, the sight lines, what the ground is like, what's there. And again, no matter what field you're in, understand the layout. And don't look at it from today's eyes. Look at it, what was it like in 1963 or 1863 or 1663? What was it like for the people who lived there? Back to Jim's point earlier. What was their culture? What was their religion? What was their, their train of thought? Because too often we tend to look at books through 21st century eyes and realize the people who were living this stuff, didn't use cell phones. They weren't on Twitter. They weren't watching television. It's a different world. And try to put yourself in that world and try to live in it Get to know, interviewing people, it's always a great thing, understand how, what are the stories the people themselves can tell you about your particular field. With their own way again. So that I'll turn it back to John, and we'll talk about the actual writing process.
Yeah, this is, I'll do writing and editing back to back, and I'll go through these quickly because I think the reason many of you are here is because of the marketing and the publication areas. So, but I don't want to shortchange it. I think maybe you've heard more about coaching and editing tonight, maybe than you've ever heard, because those are underappreciated areas. So many people will go and even ship a manuscript somewhere without another set of eyes on it. And so anyway, so talking about writing here, one of the things is try to understand what type of writer you are. Are you a plunger or a plotter? A plotter would tend to write every sentence, make sure it's perfect, go on to the next sentence. When you're done, everything's perfect. A plunger might just go and write the whole thing and then go back and fact check later. So the narrative is more intact. That way it's more of a narrative. And the problems with both of those is you can probably see in some cases you can go back and forth. Some stories you might be a plunger on, some plot. I'm revising Never Be Forgotten. It's the 225th anniversary of that book coming out. And so I'm writing about things that are up to 2024. And so on those entries, I'm especially on legal things like the race riot trials, things like that. I'm a plotter in the first degree. Other things, I just plunge into it. And when you're working with a coach, or you're a coach or working with a coach, a good thing to always do is I was meeting with someone the other day, and I was saying, just tell me your story. Just as if you were talking to your daughter, and they said, my cousin. And I said, you got it, so someone that you have an affinity with. And so we started on like that. So when you're thinking about telling a story, just go through it as if you're talking to someone you're familiar with. And then another thing that I think is really important is, I have every day, I have at least 4 or 5 things that just happen that I'm working on, just have moving along, especially if you have coaches and partners on these things. You don't want to leave them behind. So, every day I try to do a little bit to move each of those ahead. And if you don't, then you'll lose track of where you are. You'll say, and I'd like maybe Dominic or Jamie could talk about this. You had a situation like that with on your doctoral thesis, but I would really urge you to, to try to do, if you're on a project, work on it every day a little bit. That way you don't lose track of where you are.
Did you want me to share a story or?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you're writing a book or when you're writing anything, if you walk away within 3 days, you're gonna spend the first 20 minutes just refiguring out where you were when you started. So every day, if you just spend 15 minutes in the morning or after dinner, just find a time where you can sit down, and even if you write an extra word, an extra sentence, or go back and edit it, every day, 20 minutes.
I think you got that lesson originally from your doctoral
Yeah, my chair,
your chair. And you can see in long form writing how important that is. Then number 4, work out your lead ending first. That's just a little tip. Not everybody works this way, but you don't have to write the lead, just figure out what you're going to say first and what you're going to say and how you're going to end it. I think ending it is really key, because then you have something to work towards. If you wait and figure out what your ending is going to be, it may not, you may wander until you get to something that you haven't defined. And so try to work that out. And then this is in a perfect world, write your headline first, or your book title first, because that helps focus you in a big way. Even if you change it later on, having that in place is important. Okay, this is something for most of my career, I didn't use this function, but this is something to take home and use tonight, even if you're writing, is this words read aloud thing. So if you write something, go into the word with a drop down, and it's called read aloud, and you'll read your text in the Word document back to you. You can even choose female voices, guys' voices, deep voices, But anyway, whenever they're reading it back, it's amazing what you find. You know, and here's an example, especially as far as writing rhythms and so on. And because if someone's reading it to you, you get those, your lack of rhythm sometimes comes into play. For example, this example here, the creative community has been a visible and growing part of the city and county. Notice visible and growing city and county. So I'm having a kind of parallel situations there. If I would have had growing part of the city, then it wouldn't be parallel anymore. You'd have, you know, 1, 2, 1, 2. Whenever you're heard it read aloud back to you, those things really do stand out. Another example of that is in this is something I wrote. I'm not sure what it was, but it was a YDR column. Think about this for a sec. Ever since, as evidenced by street sculptures, outdoor murals, and new galleries. So you can see I had a couple of words there to help with the rhythm. I know it's not poetry, but it does read better if you have parallel structures like that. Another one over here, what cannot be lost in your county's economic picture has changed and is changing from a long time development landscape to a green conservation landscape. 3 and 3, see the parallel? So that stuff will come back at you. If you don't get the first time, when you hear your work read back to you, it'll be very obvious. Okay, this is another writing tip. Think about rhythm. Again, it's on the rhythm side of things. And this is a chapter out of the Never Forgotten revamp that I'm doing. And chapter 11, 1999 to the present, new millennium, 21st century, big challenges, great promise. So you can see very, very short, but parallel. New millennium, 21st century, big challenges, great promise. There's no asymmetry there. That might be disruptive. Okay, the idea of using quotes is, you know, often this is not misused. Quotes are there to be not to convey information, but to convey emotion. So, you know, you can see that here we have, this is all from Never Forgotten, and you have all this exposition here. And then at the end, a very short quote. They like being seen from the roadway. You know, so this, you know, there's a chance that, you know, write long, then write short, but quotes, short quotes are always best. I just spent some time with Ray Connor, the late Ray Connor who passed away, and he just filled with quotes in my last meeting with him. You know, he said, I can't get enough of Abraham Lincoln. I put these in a story I wrote on. I can't get enough of Abraham Lincoln because he had tons of Lincoln books. And then he said this about kind of the past historians. He said Tom Schaefer was the original Scott Mingus. Tom Schaefer was a 1980s, 1990s historian here in the county. He lived in the area. And then we were debating, you know, the surrender of York. And I said, where do you stand on that? He said, when you add it all up, too early would have burned the town, you know, of York. And I said, well, how would you know that? And he said, well, he did look like did Thaddeus Stevens artworks and out in Caledonia. And I said, yeah, but that Thaddeus Stevens were a benign town here in York. He said, I said the guy was a little crazy. You know, I'm going to end it. Basically, I'm ending it here. Too early was crazy, you know. So why even that's where he came down on it. So, you know, always look for those quotes, those good quotes, those colorful quotes. Tip number 3, barrier sentences. This is just something that I think I wrote this, but Agnes seriously damaged York. Houses were drenched, business interrupted, lives disrupted. Agnes also damaged the Native American archaeological sites in southern York County. Jimmy, you might have written that. I don't know, but
The Yoko sounds like me, but the middle 3 sound like you.
yeah. So anyway, you see long and short. There's nothing wrong with that. If the reader likes that, it's not drawing kind of like what I'm doing now. It's kind of a, you know, a good approach. And on Facebook, try to really write on Facebook when you're writing in the status areas. This is a big area of history in the history community. This is one I linked to Joe, my son's Instagram with this photo gallery that was on Instagram. And so I tried to write something. And I don't know if it worked, but Yorktown Hotel has a bunch of York County stuff baked into its restoration. Or maybe baked outside of this 1925 vintage hotel because this bike sits near its main entrance. So I was trying to go baked outside, I don't know, but at least I tried. Okay, so here again, I'm going to emphasize and read aloud again, real quickly. Further, we have variety stores that rarely use existing structures, but often look for green space along rural roads to build their plain boxes. So I was trying to set green space, rural roads, plain boxes, trying to get those together. Arguably, someone probably out there thinking, you really need there in there, it's an extra word that kind of throws off the rhythm. As I was looking at this, I think if you're thinking that, you'd be right. And then over here, this is a case where I did catch this on read aloud, but I left the original in here. The river to cover at least 580 acres of Chancellor Township land filled with natural, cultural, and recreational places where people live and play. So you can see I have 3 in one case and only 2 in the other. So I corrected that after I heard that. Okay, yeah, trying to move along here. Gentlemen, any comments? Give the editor enough time to do the job. In other words, don't dump the manuscript or the thing on him or her at the last minute. That shouldn't happen if you've been talking all along. You actually give right enough time to respond to edits. But here's something that's often overlooked. Try to get your visuals, your photos, your videos, try to get them in play early, especially if you're writing a book, your cover photo, your back cover photo. In fact, the story might be best told by a single photo on Facebook. Platform is important. It might be that you're going to write a book on something that can basically be covered by a photo on Facebook. Maybe that's the interest level. I guess a little bit of what Scott was saying earlier. What's the market for what you're writing? Sometimes we write a book on something that it could just be a Facebook post. I act on the speed thick skin. There's someone I'm working with now that they got an editor, the first reader editor, and that editor did a good job. And the person asked me to go over it as a second read. And I know I'm finding stuff, and I know it must be frustrating, because there's deadlines to be met, and but the person that I'm coaching with is really good and very patient, and having to go through the manuscript twice like that. The best writers are so be patient. Best writers are amenable to editing. This is something I've always noticed: is the best writers really want to be edited, and I guess the opposite is true as well. That goes back forever in my journalism career too. That Mike Argento, who's a fabulous writer, is a great person to edit. Just loves to be, well, he loves to be edited, but he will respond in a positive way to anything you write. Another really good writer, Matt Jackson. Many of you might know Matt. He's a great writer, but he's really open to editing. So that's just a rule of thumb that I think holds truth. Editing is more than proofreading, and we'll show some examples here. This was a case of editing tip number 1. Make sure that your tone is constructive. And Jamie mentioned that some of this is hard when you're busy, always, to be constructive. This is well done, might be me, but this, see, I'm trying to disarm any criticism or some of the criticism, the bite of the criticism. Might be me, but the sentence conflates the East Cavalry Guild encounter with the Battle of Hanover, because this person had written on Facebook, once again, Custer and Company thwarted Stewart, depriving Robert E. Lee of his cavalry, the eyes and ears of his army, for 2 full days at Gettysburg, the turning point of the Civil War. And so I went in and said, well, really, what happened on the East Cavalry field didn't have anything to do with delaying Stewart. That happened later in the battle. So he really conflated those 2 things together. I simplified it, and as far as I know, he acted on that.
But Jim, also you gave the change too. Instead of just saying this is wrong, you suggested an alternative.
Right, and as I said, maybe, I didn't say you gotta do this, maybe, if you could choose those types of friendly terms, then, it goes down a lot more easily whenever you're in situations of peers, And I would just tell you, even at the newspaper level, when you're under intense pressure, you don't use those niceties, but there is, you don't just throw red all over something. There's a discussion that takes place, and that's very important. this is something that Joe, my son, reads almost everything I write. And he's the editor of Penn Live. And so I had the street levels, this is something I wrote, the street level sculptures are typified in the work of Loran Jacobs. He put a number of street level sculptures were created during this time, typified in the work of Loran Jacobs. I thought it sounded better, so I didn't even ask him why he suggested that. So I went ahead and just put the changes in. Today, I asked him about this, and he said, well, it made it sound like all the street level sculptures were birds. And so we need to put the time frame in that time frame, all street level sculptures were birds. So that was really good. And then this is something I wrote that and never forgotten that Joe caught. I had found users and relapsing addicts, and he put led to new addiction for some and relapses for others. I thought that just sounds good. That sounds better. And what he told me today was, which is true, you shouldn't label people as people first and then their situation after that. So it's like calling like a person with autism an autistic kid. You can see the difference. So Joe's editor caught that. That would have been embarrassing. Would have been good. It wouldn't have been right. And then Jamie caught this is something I wrote. She read over something of Maybe in Witness New York. I got my directions mixed up where I was talking about the city's cultural center from the square towards the south. I really meant north, but I got my directions mixed up, so Jamie caught that.
He was testing me. I think you did about actually read his work.
And this is where this is the best example I can think of where an editor can help you. I wrote in, this is never forgotten, I've gone into a book. And the York County native John Betterman gains a USN seat, and I put a native. And I should have known that. I don't even use the word native. And I did this time, and Joe said he was born in West Reading, so he's not a native. So editors know stuff. Most of the best editors know stuff. They just know stuff. And how many people here knew that John Betterman was born in West Reading? There's a couple nerds here, Joe. Okay, I got it. I'm gonna just because this is the case in 2024. This involved Jeff Koons in the first edition, 1999. He had some family issues, that made international news. So I put that in the 1999 version. But in this particular 2024, I didn't put that in just because I could have put that in. His art fame has surpassed the family issues that he had. They're pretty interesting family issues. I didn't put that in. Just because we can't put stuff in doesn't mean you have to put stuff in. And this is another case. This involved Megan's Law. And in 1999, Megan's Law was pretty new. So I put the name of the person in the never got 1999. I've since learned that Megan's Law, the database is not kept up to date. And this guy, the question always is, can this guy be a bank president? Maybe this guy is a bank president now. And so I'm not going to repeat that in the 2024 edition. I just put a photograph of a man being about 50 homes. You can get legal problems doing this type of thing where you name names from the past, but it's also not right. So, in all cases, sometimes you've got to name the names, but at least go through that process. Do I really need to name these names?
So some tips about being edited. I want to start with first a book that I wrote about a local farmer, Ken Rexroth. He has since passed. His son asked me to come and write a story. And so this wasn't meant to be a public book. This was meant to just be something for the family. But after I finished it, Jim said this needs to get out there for people to read. So we ended up selling it on Amazon. I never got really an editor. Jim looked at my intro. My husband went through, but he's a proofreader. He's not really an editor. And if you look down the very first chapter, I have down here at the bottom that so Ken would help whip down desks and not wipe down desks. And it's the first page. Like, are you kidding? And it sucks because I have my PhD, but this completely illegitimizes everything. It completely makes it feel like you don't know what you're talking about because you make these small mistakes. So I wish I would have gotten an editor for this. So I keep on wrong way. So, kind of recap editing, when someone gives you suggestions, make sure that it captures the essence of what you're trying to say. It is important that, it still is in your tone and your voice. Have some humility, know when to fold, right? If it is it's better advice, then you should listen to it. But then I have 100% those self-reflection, because ultimately, it is your name going on that book. And if your editor gives you something that you don't believe in, you shouldn't do it.
All right, we're gonna finish up with the idea of how do you actually, once you got your book, how do you actually sell it? What happens then? Where are some of the outlets? So one of the things you want to do, obviously, is think about, again, back to my earlier point, know your audience. Where's your audience live? Where do they buy their books? Are they internet buyers? Do they go to Walmart? You know, do they go to local bookstores? You know, how do you actually want to get this? Understand who your local outlets are and who your national outlets are going to be as well. You know, do you have gift shops, historical societies, places like that? Where can you market your book? And are you the one doing the marketing, or is your publisher going to be doing the marketing? You need to understand that distinction as well. Again, plan up front. What are you doing? What are they doing? You know, what's the difference from that standpoint? The other huge thing you want to think about as well is if you're going to do the marketing, or if your publisher's going to do the marketing, you need collateral. You need something you can hand out, leave behind. In some cases, it may be a book itself. You want to leave with someone and say, hey, read this, can you sell this? But more than likely that, you want to develop a one-page single flyer. I do a lot of books that bring 8 books for Savastini, who is the #1 producer of Civil War books in the United States. They always issue a one-page summary of the book. What's it about? What am I going to learn from this book? What's different about this book than what other folks have done in the marketplace? And where can I buy this book? So in one quick thing, you get all that background. Another thing that in today's world I'm finding is more and more critical. I mentioned I put out Facebook pages for most of my books, at least my major books, but you might want to think about that. How else can I reach my audience? You may want to conflate your personal Facebook page with your author stuff. That's fine. You may also want to have a separate page. You know, Dominish Miller, author, versus Dominish Miller, social butterfly, whatever. You may want to have 2 separate pages. Sometimes it works, depending on who your audience is for things. But there's all kinds of stuff, Twitter, LinkedIn, I mean, Instagram, and there's a million of them that I don't even know what they are, that are out there today, that I'm sure the younger people in our audience, yes, you guys are still young, that still would enable them to do it. And finally, the last thing I want to recommend is in-person events. Don't rely on the internet. Don't rely on publishing. My chief publisher, Ted Savas, calls me, quote unquote, the hardest working author in the Civil War field. I don't know how to take that sometime, but I do 50 to 80, sometimes 100 book signings or talks a year, which you can retire, I can do that. But what you may want to do is understand, how do I get in front of my customers? You know, I want to talk to my customers. Where are they? How do I reach them? Where do I give presentations? Where do I give talks? You know, and again, it doesn't necessarily have to be in person, although that's sometimes the best, but social groups, internets, you know, Zooms, whatever you can do to, again, keep your name out there. As my publisher, Ted Savas, will tell you, know your brand and know how to sell your brand. And every author, you will have your own brand, something that people distinctly think about you in your presence. So again, Jamie, you want to talk about
Yeah,
this
yeah.
next slide?
So I wanted to jump a little bit into, so Scott touched on social media. And this is free marketing, it's free platform. So I wanted to give you some ideas of ways that you can market on social media. One is to share short snippets. So you can pick a short story or paragraph to showcase. It's kind of like a teaser. So maybe you have a very specific story that you really like. You can include that small little section. Of course, you don't want to give away the whole plot theme, but small sections are good. create videos. Dami and Jim and I create these videos and we're getting thousands of views. It's just us talking about history. So people like to see the person behind the book. They like to see your face. It gives them a little bit more of a character so they understand who's writing the book. I'm sure you in the audience, every time you go to read a book, you probably look up the author. I mean, I at least do, to understand who they are. So it can be you just reading a part of your book. Record yourself. Set up your phone. It doesn't have to be fancy. Hit record, read just a sentence or two, and then post it as a part of your teaser. Also, pull back the curtain. People really like to see your journey of how you got there. Like some of my most successful posts are me sharing my struggles. I mean, I'm really, this word isn't working, or I'm struggling to figure out how to wrap up this chapter, or my thesis isn't coming together. I can't find a good picture. And Retro Europe is fabulous. People then usually come through with some advice sometimes. But when you create a persona of yourself along the way, of you start writing your book, and you start starting on chapter 1 and starting on chapter 2, and people begin following you on your journey, then when that book comes out, they feel like you're a part of the story. There's some times where Dami, Jim, and I would go out and people come up to me and act like they know me already, which is kind of creepy, but also really cool because they follow me on social media, so they feel like they can relate to me, and so they're more likely to watch and read my stuff. Grocery shopping. That happens, yeah. And then of course, cross-posting, share on different Facebook pages, share other people's stuff on your Facebook page too, that coincides with what you're trying to promote. Because if you can be known as a warehouse like Dami, her famous claim to fame is that she has more people on her history Facebook page than there are that actually live in Newberry Town. So like cross-posting is a great idea.
Okay, and finally, how do you find a publisher? The age-old question. Back to the basics. Number one, who's out there in your field? There are certain publishers that specialize in certain fields. So go find them, take a hard look at there, and then look, how did the publisher, doesn't hurt to pick up books at BAM and look at them. They don't charge you to look at them. So go look at a variety of different books from those different publishers and take a look at how are they structured? What is their tone? What's the style? What's the publisher like? Then go find that publisher's website. And most publishers will have submission guidelines. How do we actually get a book into print with XYZ publishers? And keep in mind, they're all different. I mean, I dealt with publishers who want you to send in 1 chapter or 2 chapters or no chapters. In some cases, just send me an outline. Or other people are like, especially if you're a brand new writer, they may want to see the entire book, everything you've got. That's late in the process, folks. But you may want to at least take a hard look at what they're doing. The other thing is, Jim used the term earlier, thick skin. Don't be surprised if somebody says no. I don't like your book. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean that nobody will want to buy your book. It may mean the publisher's already got stuff on that thing, or he doesn't see your audience and you think so. So have a contingency plan. I mean, I always, back in my mind, I've got 3 things. Publisher A, publisher B, or me. It's a final resort. I'll do it myself. But there's different ways of doing that. And the other thing you need to understand is how fast you want to get your book in the marketplace. You want to go with a big national publisher. God bless you. You can go to a Random House and get a book published, fantastic. Maybe 3 years from the time you talk to Random House before you ever see that book in BAM. Because there's just a massive long line of manuscripts in front of you. National publishers have their own way of doing things. Long lead times if possible. You want to see their book done quickly, then maybe you want to consider self-publishing or something like that. But if you're going to go to self-publishing, the one piece of advice I'll give you is never ever use the pay-to-play system. If you put in self-publishing on the internet, you will find at least 50, I counted the last time, at least 50 different companies that is offering to publish your book if you pay them. Pay them for marketing, pay them for, and they will never let you go. I was telling Jamie and Tommy and Jim earlier, I had one book, I made a mistake, went through one of these pay-to-play guys 15 years ago. I've changed my email address, they still find me. They still call. The other night, last Friday night, I get a phone call from a publisher 15 years ago. I made a mistake and used these guys for a book that I since republished with a national publisher. And they're still like, we noticed you sold one copy of this book through us in the last 5 years for $2,000. Well, you're done. But that's one of the, if you're gonna self-publish, I consider Amazon Kindle Publishing, or Ingram Spark is another one I didn't put down here, but it's another free site that you can go to and publish your books. As long as you're pretty good, you're willing to do the editing, the marketing, all that stuff we talked about tonight yourself, that is a good way to go ahead. So finally, bring it back to you guys. What's going on? What are you guys working on yourself out there?
Or questions that you might have.
Perfect.
Give them some hard questions.
One at the back. Yes.
So, excuse me, I'm a little curious about the proposal process. Does every publisher want to see a proposal on the depth? Yeah, I have dealt with a lot of different publishers. Like, keep in mind, I'm strictly in one small field, Civil War publishing. But yeah, they all vary. I've got a publisher that I deal with a lot who wants a sample chapter. That's all they want. And they can tell your writing style of chapter one. They want chapter one. That's all they want. Then if it's good, then they'll work with you to get the next chapter written, things like that. There are other publishers, a couple of which come to mind right away, that, yeah, they'll want to see absolutely everything you got. So it varies from publisher to publisher. So that's one reason I always say, find 2 or 3 potential publishers and look at their pluses and minuses. And again, look at their own timeline. I mean, if you want to find a publisher and you've only got 1 chapter written, go to those kinds of companies. You know, if you're finished your book and now you're starting to shop for a publisher, then there's guys to talk to in those cases. So it varies. Again, not knowing what field you're going to go into, look at the publisher's websites. They'll tell you. One last tip that I didn't put up there. Most of the publishers have style guides, at least the good ones. The earlier you get to their style guides and the more you can follow them, the better. Because if you submit a manuscript that's been written in accordance to their style guide, they're more likely to read it. As opposed to somebody who has to pay a bit of attention that, you know, I want this grammar, I want serial, commas, etc. I don't want serial commas. And there's weird little things like that to make a difference when you submit. There's also recognize one key point. You're not the only person bugging them to get your book published. So they got almost like schoolwork. You've got to impress the teacher by doing something different, unique, better than someone else. You certainly have to be able to publish it too. You got to convince them that you were the right person, because again, it's time and money for them. So, Jim, you want to add anything?
I would just say that, I think sometimes we do get installed on books, and there's a lot of other platforms. Facebook is good. You know, we have a website. We covered many of these things. Have a website to installments, 2 chapters on that website. And then maybe after you've done that, then you can write a book. You know, so write your book on the website and then write it.
Yeah, you may know this. I'm sure you actually do. Before I ever wrote a single Civil War book, I wrote over 400 Civil War articles for Wikipedia under some names. I know what I wrote. They're out there. Nobody else knows what names I was using. But if you go back a whole lot of Civil War Wikipedia pages, you go back to the original author, it's me. And so I wrote literally 200 different biographies, different battle action summaries and things as the original author, until I honed my craft to the point where I felt confident enough. I'm going to, I'm going to write a 400-page book and submit it to a national publisher right off the bat, which it did. But yeah, instead of doing little things like that in your field, trade journals, magazine articles, social media, as Jim pointed out, there's a lot of ways to practice writing and get feedback from people that, yeah, I really like this guy's writing.
Other questions?
So I'm self-publishing on KDP. And I was looking up copywriting in my manuscript, and what I found when I Googled it, it said, as soon as you put your pen to paper, it's copyright protected. However, you can purchase a copyright manuscript, to recommend that I do that.
It depends on that. You can buy actual copyrights. Amazon will protect, if you read KDP's legal stuff carefully. And then if you publish with KDP, that's considered a registered copyright, and they will protect you in court. But if you're out on some other platform or something, yeah, you may want to consider that. Cost some money, to get a registered copyright if you're outside of a publisher that take care of that for you. Some publishers will, some won't. That's another question. When you're dealing with your publishers, how do they know copyrights? Recognizing that, that's especially in today's world. And one thing we haven't talked about is, and it's becoming a bigger deal in my world, the Civil War world. Never use AI. Okay. These people, and I know both my sons are college history professors, and they'll tell you they are getting up to 20% of the papers today being generated by AI. And they can tell that suddenly, what you write on social media doesn't match what you're writing in a book. Something's wrong somewhere. So, and if you are, Amazon, for example, and most publishers last year, is your content generated using artificial intelligence? If you say yes, be prepared for rejection.
I just wanted to say, since this might be the last time we're meeting in here, thank you to your County History Center, all to others, because this has always been a very safe place, to encouragement for writers. And, I don't write a lot, blog posts, social media, some articles, and, Jim and others have encouraged that. What am I doing recently? Just as simple as creating a professional looking flyer for my organization, but I say all that to say, like this past week, I was able to host some events with the museum out in Nebraska, because they were doing something in this area. And it just amazed me how, I'll say my writing friends, kind of step up and give you advice, or, Stephen Smith wrote a couple blog posts unexpectedly about it, and another friend Corey did a video, and, just what you were saying about, how you have people that are going to come together and help each other. That is very much appreciated, and, needed in this community. So just wanted to thank everybody for that.
Yeah, it is kind of a privilege to be here. I'm kind of last group to meet here. I'm at one of the last groups anyway. And we had a speaker here from LancasterHistory.org. And she said, we don't have a group like this over in Lancaster County. We need one. And so thank you for that. This grows, this group grows out of the publications committee. Brandon and Nicole Vince.
I have a question. I kind of went around backwards. I did 2 projects, and these I really love to do the research on these. And now I want to take all that and organize it into something more cohesive. And the audience for both would be like that, like 20 of these probably, but I do want to get some kind of format that's, gathering kind of what is something. That's what I was kind of thinking. I kind of want to just get it out. It's a lot of really interesting things.
I would just say quickly, it's kind of what we were saying. I didn't start a website with perfect name as the title of the website. And then anytime someone does a Google search, they would come across that and research about much more than the book. And then if it's really popular, which it could be, then you can do the book later.
Now, when you do research, like you look at newspapers.com, there's all these publisher articles. Is that information considered public information that you can repeat? For example, an article about a resident of a neighborhood. Can you repeat that?
You can use quotes, you obviously can use quotes from things like that. You can paraphrase, things like that. If you're going to do an entire newspaper article and recognize it's published in the last 70 years, within this last 70 years, it's copyrighted by that newspaper. Before that, covered, I don't worry about that, the Civil War stuff, people are long dead 160 years ago. So the laws are written, by defunct newspapers or newspapers that have copyrighted content. Some do, so you have to be careful with that. Yeah, I mean, usually defines all of it's really old stuff. But to Jim's point, something I'm painfully learning over the years, make your quotes shorter, use it for emphasis.
And always give credit to your sources.
Oh, always, yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing that, again, I hate to pick on people who come to me for advice, but you know how often people come to me and they've got 300-page book and it's got 14 footnotes. I'm like, it's entry level books. And you read my books, I've got footnotes every paragraph, literally in most cases. Because I tend to oversight, but I don't want people to know where I got the stuff. Because it frees you up from somebody saying, where in the world did we get that? So, yeah, always cite it, to Jim's point, always cite your sources. There's a very good researcher in York County that will forever remain anonymous. It's got some fantastic stuff that I love to use. I can't use any of it because he doesn't know where it got it. I heard it here, I copied it from this website, whatever, it's a mismatch. I can't use any of this stuff. There's some really cool stuff I love to use. They have to cite your sources, right? Absolutely. Thanks, Jim. Anything else? All right. Oh, we got
We have an odd situation at Redline. There's a catalog we'd like to publish. It's the Redline Cabinet Company catalog or the Atwood and radio catalog. What got me started on this was I went to the radio show at Kutztown Fairgrounds, which is a big deal. Used to be twice a year, I'm not sure if it is or not, but there were all, there's a whole subculture of people who are crazy about this stuff. And this catalog, which I brought with me, has some incredible pictures of it. Do you have any advice on how to approach this? I know Atwood Kent's been out of business for the 20s, like 26 or something. Redline Cabinet Company moved on to different adventures and dropped the cabinets back into the 60s, I guess. They do not mark copyrights in any of their catalogs. So are we stymied here?
Yeah, what I would do is, copyrights, that type of stuff, that doesn't help your purchase legally. I'm based on my long years. But I think I would do the due diligence of trying to find if there's any remnant of the Redline Cabinet Company left under some conglomerate or something, and at least try to go to them. Do that, and if you don't get anywhere, I think you're okay. For something that 70 years is a good rule of thumb, but at least take good notes and that as what you've done in terms of reaching the publisher. The problem.
It's basically, there might be a page of global.
Right.
Now, I have a designer who's willing to look for a publisher. She would, her company would do all the mock-up.
That's all the more reason if you're going to republish it and extend it to try to get the problems of the company if it's still around.
Here again, I think it's a lot of cases of giving credit to the original publication,
Right.
as long as it's that.
Yeah, well, I have the original publication and we want to copy it, so, publish it as it was, and that would be part of the whole.
Yeah. I've seen things
Yeah,
like
and
that.
Have you ever seen that catalog?
No, but I've seen, you know, republish things like that, that's what you do.
Yeah. It's a beautiful catalog.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's have a round of applause for Jamie. And our next Writers Roundtable will be in September. We are going to be in the New York History Center, and it will be based on the York History Center as our topic. We just don't have any details yet, but stay tuned for that. You can sign it on the York History website, and we'll share it across all of our social media platforms. So we hope to see you back in September. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.